So I am in Shibuya, and I am near the famous Shibuya. This is where tourists from abroad would typically come and capture videos. But now, because of the corona pandemic, there are very few visitors from abroad. So the crossing is kind of discouraged. But still, it's a very good place to be. So I'm on my way to all English event organized by the Tokyo Metropolitan Government. It's an event for Japanese senior high school students, as well as students from countries like Australia, New Zealand, Thailand, Vietnam, and so on. So I'm looking forward to that all English event. I and Mari Sekine are really talented female actress and performer would host the meeting, and I'm looking forward to that. Anyways, I would like to discuss the feeling of the Japanese people toward China. This is not a political statement, it's just a cultural and historical observation. People in the West might be, kind of alarmed by the rapid rise of China as an economic and political superpower. But if you look back on the history of East Asia, China has been always big, except for the last 150 years or so, perhaps. After the Opium War, China has been the victim of aggression from the West and Japan. So this has been really exceptional period in the history of China. Apart from that period, China has been always big in its presence. So the Japanese people, throughout its history and cultural heritage, are accustomed to the idea that they are this really big neighbor, China, and everything we do needs to be kind of defined and context given in relation to China. So what's happening right now is nothing new. And having said that, looking at the Beijing Olympics right now, I do feel that intuitively we are feeling the need, psychological need, which is available and also new, to define ourselves, define our unique identity in juxtaposition or flanked by the Chinese influence. And this has been the central agenda in Japan for a long time. If you look back on history, Prince Shotoku sent a letter to China proclaiming that it was from the land of the rising sun, which is just a plain geographical statement of the fact that Japan lies in the east of China. So seen from China, Japan is indeed the land of the rising sun. But of course, this also had cultural implications, and to this day, this denomination of Japan as the land of the rising sun has stayed on, and in the English-speaking countries, for example. So this has been a really good branding movement from Prince Shotoku. But this shows that, from the very early period of history, Japan has always been aware of its really big neighbor and has tried to uniquely identify the Japanese heritage. For example, scholars like Norinaga Motori, who studied the Kojiki scriptures, he tried to define the uniqueness of Japan in contrast to the Chinese way of things. It's not just confrontation. It's a fact that the Japanese people have always admired the Chinese culture and people. We have shown great respect for our neighbor, And I think, despite some political discourses and sometimes confrontations, I think the deeply held respect for the Chinese culture and Chinese heritage is still being in the heart of the Japanese people. But having said that, looking at the Beijing Olympics, we do feel that we do need to define our unique existence, if you like, in relation to the giant China. And in that respect, I think probably the world, especially the West, might have a lot of things to do in relation to China, inspired by the Japanese way of approaching China, because after all, the Japanese people have been accustomed to this idea of a huge Chinese presence for almost 2,000 years, say. And it's nothing new. So we have developed certain set of mindsets and psychological techniques to deal with the situation. So the West might be panicking because of the rise of China, but it's nothing to do in the minds of the Japanese people. And I think a key concept is Nagomi, which is, by the way, the theme of my forthcoming book from Kirkus. Nagomi is this idea that you can try to strike a balance, harmonious balance between different elements, and I believe that we can strike a balance, a Nagomi, between the big China, which has been there all the time anyway, except for a short period of time when China was dormant, and according to the words of Napoleon, when China, the lion, was sleeping. But now it has awakened, and we need to come to grip that reality. And looking at the way Beijing Olympics is organized, I think it's a great lesson to be learned. I think we can all make peace and stay harmoniously prosperous together. This is not propaganda. I'm just making an observation, and now I'm near the place where I'm going to give this really wonderful talk, I hope, to the senior high school students in Japan and abroad. So see you around.